Has Matt Murray played his last game as a Toronto Maple Leaf? My projected starting goalie and more in this episode of Hat Trick HQ. Hey, it's your host Mark Pye here, and welcome, guys. This is our first ever episode of Hat Trick HQ. Hope you enjoy it, and let's dive straight into it. This whole offseason have been rumors with the Leafs. You look at Matthews' contract, if he's going to get extended, what's happened with William Nylander. But the third thing people have talked about is what's happening with Matt Murray. Well, with Matt Murray, the biggest thing here is how do they get rid of him? How do they move the contract? How do they free up the space? And we're finally starting close to the answer. You see reports this whole season where maybe he might get bought out. He might get traded with a sweetener like a Nick Robinson or even a pick plus more to get rid of the contract. But we have an update. Chris Johnson reports the Leafs announced that Matt Murray is out indefinitely and will be placed on LTIR for the 2023-24 season. That just answers it right there. The Leafs aren't going to trade him. They don't need to buy him out. He's just going to be sent to Barbados Island, and the rest is history. With Matt Murray, he was traded for last offseason by Kyle Dubas from the Ottawa Senators, and at the start of the year, he did look good. When you look at his stats with the Leafs, in 26 games played, he put up a 14-8-2 record with a .903 save percentage, and parts of the season, he looked good. Some parts, he even looked like their best goalie. But the biggest problem was the injury concern. When we traded for Matt Murray, we knew there was a bit of an injury situation. When you look at his seasons in Ottawa, he only played a combined of 47 games over his 2 seasons, and everyone knew it was either he was going to be fine or the injuries were going to catch up, and the injuries did catch up. When he played with the Pittsburgh Penguins back when he started in 2016, you look at the 2015-16 season, he played 13 games where he did go on to win the Stanley Cup. And you know what he did in 2016-17? He went on and won back-to-back. With the Pittsburgh Penguins, he played 49 games, 49, 50, and 38. He was incredible there. You've seen him knock Marc-Andre Fleury out of the starting job, which led to him being moved. You looked at him taking over in the playoffs, and parts of his season, he looked like the best goalie in Ottawa. And honestly, put up the debate that he was a top 5 goalie in the NHL. The problem with that was once he got to Ottawa, things started to go down a tiny bit, and when he got to Toronto, he just really couldn't get his foot in due to injuries. You've seen Kyle Dubas trade for him, and when he acquired Elia Samsung via free agency and they traded for Matt Murray, reports have said that they were battling. Whoever was the best goalie got the starting job. And the problem was Matt Murray just never got the starting job. And that leads me to, with him gone now, is Samsonov the starter? Or who's the Leafs starting goalie going into next season? Well, there's 2 names that I can think of that the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to run as their goalie tandem, and who I personally think is going to take the goalie tandem, and more. So, you look at Elia Samsonov. In 42 games with the Toronto Maple Leafs this past season, he put up a 27-10-5 record with a .919 save percentage. Honestly, you could argue that Samsonov was the Leafs' best goalie for the past almost decade. You look at the previous goalies, you had someone like Freddie Anderson, who was always steady Freddie. But the problem was the injuries caught up, and sometimes you couldn't really rely on him. Jack Campbell looked good, but the workload was a bit of a situation with a bit of injury concern. Jonathan Burney was, serviceable. And you had guys like James Reimer, a fan favorite, who did play well for the Leafs. But when you look at Samsonov, the 27-10 record with the .919 save percentage, he provided some of the most steady goaltending the Leafs had in past previous seasons. Seen him make big saves. He bailed him out of some games, and some games he didn't play well. But for the majority, he was, the Leafs' best goalie. This guy, though, Joseph Woll, in 7 games with the Toronto Maple Leafs, he had a 6-1 record with a .932 save percentage. He's only 25 years old. The Leafs drafted him in the 3rd round in 2016, 62nd overall, and I think they have a gem with this guy. You look at last season, he was a guy that came in the playoffs, and the spotlight wasn't too much for him. Seems like a guy that can handle the Toronto media as well, because you looked like when they traded for Ryan O'Reilly, and he went to practice and looked at the lineups, he got confused and realized they got him. He seems like a guy that, pressure doesn't break him, and from his limited role, he did look outstanding for the Leafs. I think going into the season, you could even run a tandem of Samsonov and Wall and have one of the best tandems in the league. You really look at it, you could play Samsonov maybe 60 to 70% of the games, and Joseph Wall could come in just behind him with 30 to 40%. And you might see Joseph Wall make the case to go for a 50-50 split down the crease. But is this enough for the team? Personally, I think so. You have a guy like Shelgren who has had experience in the NHL. He has stepped in situations and stuff like that. But I think a tandem of Samsonov and Wall is one of the best in the league. You look at the firepower in front of Toronto, they do keep the puck out of their zone a lot. You look at their defense, who has been pretty steady with a guy like Jacob McCabe, and just great ads. But I think this is more than enough. You might add a guy like, an older veteran in the free agency that might help him out in the end. But personally, I think you just ride with this and you kind of just deal with that later. If an injury happens or if one of them starts to not play what you think, you could pick up an older guy. But what do you guys think? Do you think this tandem's good? Do you think Joseph Woll could steal the starting job? Or do you think they just need to go trade for a guy like Connor Hellebuyck? Anyways, like I said, thanks for watching, guys. This is the first ever episode, so if you could like, subscribe, and if you enjoyed it, send it to a few friends. Hope you enjoyed, and take care.